Where the f is Gohan?
That's right. Cry.
Look, I'm not trying to say that in a playful way, nor is it coming off from a genuine place of anger. I'm just kind of confused by the seeming lack of confidence from everybody involved, at least from the business front, if not from the creative side as well. Just to understand the true monetary value of Gohan being in the franchise at all. Now, if it isn't clear, the reason I'm focusing on this specific issue right now is that despite the continued dominance of the Dragon Ball franchise on a worldwide scale, the brand once again broke the internet with the introduction of Super Saiyan 4 Goku. But also we got Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta in the mainline canon, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean.
Let me tell you something before I destroy you. This is Super Saiyan 3. It's a Super Saiyan bargain sale.
Anyway, the point is, Dragon Ball has made its way back into the cultural consciousness while once again forgetting to include one of its most consequential characters. Which kind of allows the perfect reintroduction to a video that I made just a couple of years back discussing the disappointing reality that I've noticed with the erosion of Gohan as a pivotal character within this franchise, and how that decision might have actively harmed our generation, the millennial generation, in the long run.
A millennial can be defined as anyone born between 1982 and 2000, or anyone who thinks loving Sriracha or Austin, Texas counts as a personality.
I've attached that video to the end of this segment, but first I wanted to acknowledge that while Gohan hasn't been the most well-utilized character in the franchise over the last several decades, the last major animated project before Dragon Ball Daima was indeed Dragon Ball Super Super Hero, which saw Gohan and Piccolo star in a cinematic hybrid of Broly's Second Coming, Bio Broly, and BoJack Unbound, coupled together with the best bits of the Cell games to boot. But even as good as that movie was, and I love it, it still didn't live up to the success of Dragon Ball Super Hero Broly from 2018. Probably because Broly, as a design, at least if not a character himself, is someone who pulls in more than just the casuals. Also, just the studio's lack of confidence within that film probably drove it to less than stellar results. So now, despite Superhero, here we are, just forced to see the continuation of this beloved series without one of the most pivotal characters. And I'm kind of just forced to ask, did Dragon Ball fail the millennial generation by abandoning Gohan as a character? Recently, Kanji and I took some time to talk about our early days on YouTube, and if you didn't listen to that video, well, essentially we both came up during the growing interest in Dragon Ball around the release of Dragon Ball Super midway through the past decade, and while I certainly have a soft spot for the series, I would be lying if I said it wasn't the epitome of playground enthusiasm. In kind of that it's enjoyable to discuss with your friends, so long as there's something interesting and new to talk about. Now, I know a lot of people might disagree with me on this point, but I really don't know what else there is to discuss on this series when there's no new content coming out. And I know that we still have the manga, Dragon Ball Heroes, the video games, etc., but without any new anime, I'm just not really feeling it now, you guys. With that being said, there is a part of me that still wants to kind of discuss Dragon Ball as an entire series, just kind of a little bit differently. So for anyone who is still interested, I'm sure that there will be more Dragon Ball content to come on this channel, starting with today's video, in which we're going to talk about this, and this. No, I don't want to sit here and harp on Gohan, nor do I want to make an entire video about how you're wrong about him either. I just want to see if I can articulate a more nuanced reason why there are so many people in the Dragon Ball fandom who have such a problem with the way that Gohan turned out. How, just maybe, Dragon Ball accidentally failed a not so insignificant number of its own fans with its decision to continue past the Cell games, all while staying consistent to its characters, its narrative, and even its medium. Before we get too far in the weeds of this discussion, I do think it's important to remember that Dragon Ball, the manga, was never meant to be seen as two separate stories, as the original 42 volumes were created as one continuous narrative. The distinction between Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z was more of a marketing thing than a legitimate sequel series. So with that knowledge, it shouldn't surprise anyone when I say that Goku was, is, and always will be the main protagonist of the series. However, as the series did move on, Goku grew up from a teeny preteen surviving off the land after his grandfather passed to a full-grown man who nearly destroyed an entire multiverse because he wanted to have a fun fight. But that's kind of the first point here. The fact that Goku grew up is rather important. Not only just to the point of this video, but also the formula of your typical shonen manga series. It may seem cliche now, but back in the day, manga protagonists didn't grow up. If they did, it would usually be for one of the last chapters or at least the last couple of chapters in the series. A lot of that has to do with the manga industry as a whole, especially with battle mangas like Dragon Ball, as the main audience for that subgenre are typically young men, and it is kind of important to have these type of series have some kind of a protagonist character that acts a bit more like a surrogate to the younger male audience. So if anything, that is why Goku started as a young teenage kid. It's also the reason why, after Goku finished his first major arc and quote-unquote grew up, we were introduced to Gohan. It's the reason Dragon Ball Z ended with the tease of Oob, and it's certainly the reason why Goten and Trunks are cursed to never grow up in the current age of the series. But I want to stop there and go all the way back to the introduction of Gohan, especially as it pertains to the marketing decision to separate the anime storyline from Z to the original series Dragon Ball, while also focusing on just how popular the series became in the Western world during the events of the Saiyan arc. I mean, maybe this is one of those things that you just had to be there for, but there was a time in the United States where Dragon Ball Z was so popular that it was easier to look at and just acknowledge Dragon Ball as the prequel series to Z instead of the thing that just came before it. Or more specifically, for a good chunk of the Dragon Ball Z audience at the time, we had just missed out on the entire first part of the story. I mean, even to the best of my recollection, it was just my friends and I salivating over the prospect of finally being able to see Trunks or the Cell games, or maybe just wondering just how powerful Super Saiyan 5 would actually be when we finally got to see it, not even realizing that Dragon Ball AF wasn't anything other than a fan series. And yet, just taking all of that into account, I just want to remind you of what I said before. Especially with battle mangas like Dragon Ball, as the main audience for that subgenre are typically young men, and it is kind of important to have these type of series have some kind of a protagonist character that acts a bit more like a surrogate to the younger male audience. One of the most interesting things that I've experienced during my time in the Dragon Ball community was learning just how true that statement is for young men and women. And probably due solely to the strange release schedule of Dragon Ball into the broader Western culture, it isn't hard to understand why Gohan, above every other character in the series, was that surrogate character for many of us growing up. As Dragon Ball Z progressed, we found ourselves growing up with Gohan, seeing him overcome obstacles while constantly hinting at his greater potential, a hidden power that would eventually allow him to surpass his father and eventually save the day. For that single character, it's a journey that lasted years, but we eventually got to witness it in a moment that many fans still argue is the best in the entire series. And I think one of the reasons that moment is so significant for so many people, especially in the United States, is because even for a fleeting moment, Dragon Ball Z seemed to have delivered on its most significant promise. That no matter how many times you've been knocked down, no matter how much you think you've let everyone else down, or how much you might doubt yourself, you can overcome your demons and emerge on the other side, stronger, more capable, and that if called on in the future, you can stand up to the challenge and get it done. This is one of the most common lessons in fiction. Growing up is expressed in a character's ability to look past his or her current situation and to understand that they've been there before. And despite all the hardships that they've gone through, they know that they're perfectly capable of overcoming this new obstacle. And for the genre and audience that Dragon Ball has always tried to focus on, this was kind of a great story device in order to help teach them not to focus too much on their current failures, but instead have them focus and understand that they are the amalgam of their past successes that brought them to this current problem. And again, for many fans like myself, Gohan was that surrogate character. Not Goku, not Vegeta, not Piccolo or even Krillin. Gohan was the one that needed to learn that lesson in order to help teach us that it was possible to overcome our insecurities and help us understand that it's possible to stand on our own 2 feet. Nevertheless, I have to once again reiterate. So with that knowledge, it shouldn't surprise anyone when I say that Goku was, is, and always will be the main protagonist of the series. You see, as Dragon Ball continued into the Buu arc, GT, or more specifically Super, it became more and more apparent that the series was trending away from Gohan by attaching itself to Goku and Vegeta as the series leads. And for many fans, this direction betrayed their perception of the series as a whole, and the longer it's gone on, it's just evaporated all the lessons learned after the end of the Cell games. As I've already said, I am not here to argue the merits of Gohan's character development post-Cell games. If you ask me, the Great Saiyaman arc is still one of the best in the series, as it's probably the right amount of silly after the uncharacteristically dark storyline that we had just seen prior. Also, I'm even okay with Gohan just accomplishing his goal of being a scholar.
Someday, I'm gonna be a great scholar.
As fictional characters go, he's a pretty great one for a role model. He's a good man, he's a kind husband, and he's a great father. And if you're looking for someone to emulate, then yeah, sure, he's a great one because you can and you should be all of those things to the best of your ability. But this is a shonen series. This is Dragon Ball. The most important thing of all is to fight. Saving the world, saving the universe, saving the multiverse, all of it is just a byproduct of being capable of beating your current foe. And in that respect, Gohan didn't really grow up. Instead, he kind of slowly reverted back to who he was at the beginning of Z. And in no other series is that more apparent than throughout Dragon Ball Super, where we constantly see him fail to rise above the physical challenge and openly relying on his father to save everyone, including his beloved family.
Why didn't you go Super Saiyan?
You know, it might be strange to say, but as I continue to grow up and find myself facing more and more obstacles, each seemingly kind of more impossible than the last, it kind of sucks to see Dragon Ball continue with my childhood surrogate becoming less and less capable of solving his problems, all while openly cheerleading his father to solve it for him. And again, I'm not here to say that Gohan doesn't have any merit as a character. He is still one of my favorite characters in the entire series, but I've never really looked at it this way, and I'm willing to believe that most of y'all haven't really looked at it this way either. Every time this comes up, I just see a lot of people groaning about how Gohan has wasted potential. They talk about how strong he could have been if he just continued to train, as if his character was ever written to be that way in the first place. All the while they ignore how Dragon Ball has stayed remarkably consistent to its original vision. Goku is the main character, and he will always be the one who keeps fighting to save the day, no matter what. But in that way, Dragon Ball has kind of failed a lot of its fans in a way that they, or even it, might not really fully understand. Maybe this is a product of having watched Dragon Ball Z first. Maybe I'm overthinking it entirely. I don't know. That's just my take.